Have you ever wondered how to grow multiplying onions in central Alabama? Today, we're delving into the world of these fascinating little growers. Multiplying onions, also known as bunching onions, are a great choice for beginners and seasoned gardeners alike. They thrive in our central Alabama climate, offering a delightful harvest with minimal fuss. But don't be fooled. Growing multiplying onions isn't just about putting a bulb in the ground and waiting for it to sprout. It's a process, but a rewarding one. Before you even get your hands dirty, there's some prep work to do. What's critical to growing bountiful multiplying onions, you ask? Well, let's start with choosing the right patch of soil. You'll want a location that enjoys plenty of sunlight throughout the day, as onions are sun-loving plants. Next, let's talk about the soil itself. Onions aren't too picky, but they do have a preference for well-draining soil. Why? Because soggy soil can lead to rot, and no one wants that. So, if your soil is a bit on the heavier side, consider adding some organic matter to improve its structure and drainage. Now, on to pH levels. Onions prefer a slightly acidic to neutral soil, somewhere between 6 and 7 on the pH scale. If your soil doesn't naturally hit that sweet spot, don't worry. A little bit of lime or sulfur can help adjust the pH levels. Remember, taking the time to prepare your garden now will save you headaches down the road. Now that your garden is prepped and ready, it's time to plant those onions. To start, grab a handful of bulbs. You'll want to nestle each one into the soil about 2 inches deep. That's about the length of your thumb from the tip to the first knuckle. The pointy end should be facing up towards the sky, while the flat end is cozied up with the earth. Let's talk about spacing. Imagine a checkerboard pattern. That's the kind of arrangement you're aiming for. Each bulb should have around 4 inches of personal space in every direction. This gives them room to grow without crowding each other out. As for timing, in central Alabama, the best time to plant multiplying onions is in the early fall. That's when the soil starts to cool, but there's still enough warmth for the bulbs to establish roots before winter. With your onions snug in the ground, the waiting game begins. Scene script. Planting is just the beginning. Caring for your multiplying onions is where the real work starts. Watering your onions is a delicate balance. Too little water and the bulbs won't develop properly. Too much and you risk root rot. A good rule of thumb is to water them thoroughly once a week or more frequently during hot, dry periods. If the top inch of soil feels dry, it's time to water. Fertilizing is another important aspect of onion care. A high phosphorus fertilizer applied at planting time helps the bulbs get off to a strong start. Then, about 6 weeks after planting, a nitrogen-rich fertilizer can be applied to support leaf growth. Now let's talk about pests and diseases. Onions are susceptible to a few common garden pests. Thrips, tiny insects that suck the juice from the plants, and onion maggots, which tunnel into the bulbs, can both cause significant damage. Regularly checking your plants and using organic or chemical pest controls can help keep these pests at bay. On the disease front, onions can fall prey to pink root, white rot, and downy mildew, among others. Good garden hygiene, crop rotation, and resistant varieties are your best defense here. Remember, prevention is better than cure. Taking care of your onions might seem like a lot of work, but believe me, that moment when you pull up your first fully grown bulb, it's all worth it. Consistent and careful care will see your onions thriving in no time. The moment you've been waiting for has finally arrived. It's time to harvest those onions. So how do you know when your onions are ready to be picked? Well, your onions are ready for harvesting when the tops begin to yellow and fall over. This is your onion's way of saying they've stored all the energy they can and are ready to leave the garden. Now, it's important to be gentle during the harvesting process. You don't want to damage your precious produce. Use a garden fork to lift the onions out of the ground, being careful not to pierce them. Once they're out, let them dry in the sun for a few hours. This helps the skin to harden and makes them less prone to damage during storage. But remember, only a few hours. Leaving them out too long can lead to sun scald. Now let's talk about storing. Proper storage is key to extending the shelf life of your onions. First things first, you want to cut off the tops, leaving about an inch. This prevents moisture from entering the bulb. Then, brush off any soil without removing the papery outer layers. Those layers are nature's way of preserving the onion. When it comes to storage, think cool, dry, and dark. A basement, cellar, or even a pantry can make a perfect storage area. Spread your onions out in a single layer on a tray or hang them in mesh bags. This allows for good air circulation, which helps prevent rot. A word of caution though. Don't store your onions near potatoes. Potatoes give off moisture and gases that can make onions spoil faster. And there you have it. Harvesting and storing onions isn't rocket science, it's just a matter of patience and care. With these tips in mind, you'll be well on your way to enjoying your homegrown onions for months to come. With your onions harvested and stored, you're all set to enjoy your homegrown produce.